Good morning, everybody. I'm Larry Weissoon. If you enjoy real-world hunting and fishing talk, you're really going to enjoy listening to my good friend, Luke Clayton, and his guest for the next hour.
This is David Fox, and welcome to Outdoors with Luke Clayton and Friends. Luke has been a recognized outdoors writer for the past 3 decades and writes for a host of outdoor publications. Luke pens a weekly newspaper outdoors column that appears in over 40 Texas newspapers. Luke is on the pro staff of Pyramid Air, your one-stop shop for everything air gun related. Smoking Tech's electric smokers and AGM Global Vision, maker of an awesome line of thermal hunting scopes and spotters. Feel free to contact Luke through his website, catfishradio.org. Now let's join Luke and his guests for this week's show.
Welcome to the Campfire, brought to you by Hornady, Accurate, Diddley, Dependable, Taurus, Mossberg, Stealth Vision, Vineyard Max, and DSC Conservation, Education, and Hunter Advocacy. And Mr. Luke Clayton, we not very long ago finished the DSC Foundation Gala in Dallas and raised a tremendous amount of money thanks to lots of sponsors and lots of outfitters and people who contributed all the way through. And that money will be going through a variety of grants that are very well vetted. A lot of them here in North America and a few abroad as well, too. And really want to thank everybody involved. And I want to remind everybody, too, very quickly that the Texas Wildlife Association is going to be having their convention pretty quickly here, too, in July. And we'll talk about that a little bit more. But, you know, I saw something on the internet the other day, actually on Facebook, from Samuel Old. And it showed a photo of developing antler buck, and we're back to that stage now where whitetail bucks have started to be interesting again.
That's true. I saw the pictures that Samuel, he's up in Virginia, folks, and he's an astute studier of whitetails, and I know he and Larry consult a lot on whitetail management and all that, and I get the benefit of watching some of his videos. They're really good. Yeah, so you know what might be interesting to a lot of our listeners, Larry, is for you to let's start, say, in the spring. Let's start in late winter when the antlers drop, and just kind of walk us through. Some people know what's going on, but I guarantee you, a lot of people are not totally aware. I get asked quite often by family members and others, "You mean those deer lose their antlers and grow them back that big the same year?" A lot of people are not tuned into that. So what happens in the wintertime? The antlers fall off. They shed their antlers. What causes that? And then kind of walk us on up to the spring when they start budding out again, Larry.
All righty. Well, with increasing daylight hours, after the breeding season is over in the rut, or if you want to call it the rut, there is a dramatic drop in testosterone. And when that testosterone drops to a certain level, that abscission line where the antler attaches to the skull right there on the pedicle. And if you've ever found a cast antler, if you'll turn it upside down and look where it attaches, you can see all these little rough edges. Well, that's where it attaches, and there's an abscission line that when that testosterone drops to a certain level due to increasing daylight, that abscission line just kind of separates from the rest of the antlers, literally fall off. Sometimes both will fall off at the same time. Some of them times there'll be one that retains a little bit longer than the other, but almost immediately then after that happens, there's a very slow increase in testosterone, and that causes that antler to start growing again. And what happens is, as soon as that antler starts falling off, that skin starts kind of coming together again at the top of that pedicle. And as that testosterone increases due to increased daylight hours, guess what? The antlers grow, and they continue growing. Particularly if they're on good nutrition, and that's very important to have as well too. The presence of a good nutrition situation, because a healthy deer is what you're looking for, and a healthy deer will actually grow bigger antlers every year as long as there's good nutrition throughout that entire time and on a day-to-day basis. But those antlers grow extremely fast, and they're consisting of probably I can't remember, calcium, phosphorus, several trace minerals, a certain amount of protein, if you will, and they grow at an unbelievable rate. I think there's only one or two cancer type cells that grow quicker than what antlers do on deer, and in particular we're talking about whitetail deer, mule deer, elk, moose, some of those red stags, fallow deer, axis deer, those kind of things, and those kind of animals. But that antler grows really, really fast, and to the point to where we are now, we're starting to get to the not very long from now, those antlers will be completely grown, and then they'll start hardening probably in about probably in another month or so. Once those antlers are hardened inside, then there's again, we're starting to then start seeing a decreasing amount of daylight slowly again, and the testosterone all of a sudden, when that antler is completely developed bone wise on top, there's a shot of testosterone that causes the blood vessels that have been carrying all these nutrients into these growing antlers to squeeze down to nothing, to where it actually kills the blood vessels going into the antlers. That causes a little bit of itching, and the bucks start rubbing. But honestly, because it's killed that velvet that's growing on those antlers, that velvet would come off anyway, and then we're right back into an increasing amount of testosterone as we go into the fall, going into the breeding season, and those bucks become very active and very interested in breeding does, and then we go back through the winter after the breeding season, and the whole thing starts all over again.
That's a good account of it, Larry. And so what triggers the end of the breeding season? The drop in the hormone, is that it, or?
Primarily the drop in hormone. Whitetail deer, particularly, and mule deer and elk and moose, most reindeer as well too, or caribou, if you will. For the most part, they're not producing viable sperm once those antlers come off, and until those antlers again are hardened, kind of thing. So even though there may be a little bit of testosterone, if there was a breeding really, really late, chances are the does wouldn't conceive because the buck's no longer producing viable sperm. So, but it's that the reason the rut occurs, or the breeding season occurs when it does in the fall, is that with whitetail deer, essentially 230 days later, those fawns are born at the most opportune time as far as nutrition is concerned, so that doe can produce a goodly amount of meat, a good amount of milk, I should say.
Yep.
And then so she produces a healthy fawn. There's vegetation on the ground too for the fawns to start growing and start eating, their own hard food. So basically, again, the reason the rut occurs is so that those fawns can be born with the best chance of surviving into adulthood.
The natural world is amazing, and all this cycle, daylight plays a prime ingredient, isn't it? One of the major reasons that it all happens when it does, the amount of daylight.
It really does. And on the reverse of that, when we're looking at like some of the birds and like talking about doves and quail and turkeys, the same thing happens in a way with the amount of decreasing daylight, increasing daylight, other than it's a reverse to where then when that daylight starts increasing in coming out of the wintertime, that's when the breeding seasons occur pretty much on the birds. And again, it's related to the fact that during the summertime, late spring, summertime, with turkeys, there's a bunch of little grasshoppers and little bugs, and the seeds are starting to form as a result from the spring growth. And so it's very related to daylight hours, and also the fact of the most nutritious time of the year for that particular species.
It all fits together perfectly. Yeah, and then so when the poults, say turkeys for instance, when they hit the ground, like you say, okay, there's an abundant supply of food, and when they need a little more protein, well, okay, there's your grasshopper. So just as a layman and somebody that's watched the natural scheme of things all my life, I never cease to be amazed to how nature, how it just supplies things at the right time. It seems that, I guess through eons, it's just worked out that way. But I'll tell you one thing, I'm sure glad it did, and I'm glad those antlers are growing right now. I saw Mr. Samuel Old there, his videos, Craig's Creek, I think on Facebook it is.
Yes, sir.
I think that's his Craig's Creek Deer and Wildlife Management, if I'm remembering correctly. I think that's the name.
I think it's correct.
Yeah, Craig's Creek Deer and Wildlife Management up in the mountains of southwestern Virginia, the Blue Ridge Mountains, up in bluegrass country. That's where he's at. But I see those lush hay fields and those deer on those food plots and all. They're out there chowing down. You know, before we know it, Larry, we're into January. By the end of January, we're into. Yeah, I'm thinking hunting too hard now. But we're into July is what I meant to say, and then another month by the end of August. Well, by then those antlers they're about done, and these bucks are gonna get into hard horn, and by golly, it won't be much longer. Say September, go through the month of September, and then it's hunting season again. It's amazing how quick that's rolling around already, you know?
It really is. And what's interesting, we talked about the rut a little bit. In Texas, we have a number of different areas where the rut occurs. For the most part, it's going to be the first to middle part of November, and get into deep South Texas, and then it starts generally about the middle of December. Although usually sometimes it starts like the first of December. Now there's an area down close between Houston and Victoria where a lot of times those bucks are chasing does like crazy from late August into September. And again, it kind of comes down to the importance of when is the best time for those fawns to be born as far as nutrition is concerned. That has a little bit of a rule too. Now, if you take like axis deer, they're from a very temperate zone, and we have a lot of axis deer in Texas now too. They actually produce viable sperm throughout the year, whether in hard antler or not, the bucks do. But generally, there's no really set breeding season other than, it's a little bit of a peak in June kind of thing, June and July.
Yeah.
But again, they're from an area where you don't hardly have summer, winter, spring, fall, any of those things. The seasons stay pretty much the same, so that there's really no reason for those animals to be born at a certain time in those particular areas. So it still carries over a little bit here since we have the axis deer now in such abundance in Texas.
You bet. I love to hunt them, love to eat them too. But,
my gosh, yes.
Yeah. That's another topic we'll get into another show here maybe. But people talk about the axis deer being so good. They are excellent eating, but to me, venison that has been eating, a healthy diet is whitetail is awesome food. I love.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah. Yes. But comparing say fallow to axis, I dare say axis gets so much press, if you will, about how good the meat is excellent. No doubt fallow deer is also excellent. I'm not sure I could tell the difference between chicken fried fallow and chicken fried axis steak, because I've eaten them both quite a bit. But they're all good. I wish we had more time, but we'll get into these topics maybe eating and cooking venison next time, Larry.
There you go.
Yeah, something that we're both good at, right?
Oh yes, me particularly the eating part.
Me too. I'm an expert at that. Larry, thank you a lot for being with us, and I'm already looking forward to next week, buddy.
Luke, I am too. We'll see everybody right back here around the campfire, as you said, next week.
Folks, this segment is made possible by Ultramatic Feeders. Go online to ultramaticfeeders.com and check out the most awesome line of game feeders in the world. I've been using these things for 15 years, and I've got one that's been in the woods about 10 or 11 years. I forget exactly how long. Check them out, ultramaticfeeders.com. Pyramid Air, your one-stop shop for everything air gun related, anything you need relating to air guns. Go online to Pyramid, Pyramyd, pyramidair.com. Folks, this segment is made possible by Smoking Tex electric smokers that I've been using a long, long time, Catfish Pro, catfishing baits, and catfish supplies, the Bow Barn in Greenville, Texas, right there on I-30, Ultramatic Feeders, and AGM Global Vision, maker of the spotters and thermal scopes that I hunt with. Well, friends, what do you say we visit with a friend of mine, Mr. Casey Laughlin, with Chums on the Water? I know a lot of you have heard Casey and Brett talking on the radio with us, and I've been fishing with these guys for, I don't know, a couple of months now and having a lot of fun. But let's get a little update on sand bass. They fish for everything, but especially white bass, sand bass, and, hybrid stripers. But, Casey, thanks for spending a little time with us today, buddy.
Hey, Luke, glad to be on here with you.
Yes, sir. One thing, you were telling me, now, when I fished with you guys, I did the newspaper article. That now has been a couple of weeks ago. We were finding fish in pretty tight schools. We were fishing down at Tawakoni, Lake Tawakoni. And, folks, if you're listening out of state, Lake Tawakoni, we're talking lakes just east of Dallas. Tawakoni's about an hour east. But, anyway, we were finding tight schools, and where you catch one vertically fishing, with slabs, you'd catch a bunch. We caught a ton of them. But now they're kind of, I don't know, for lack of a better word, they're spreading out more, which would make a casting presentation more effective sometimes rather than vertical straight down. Is that right?
Yeah, Luke, we're seeing, the schools are still, pretty large schools we're getting on top of, but they're not reacting as well to the vertical jigging. So, casting a bait, casting a slab, we use a little, almost like a Carolina rig with a pet spoon on it.
Mm-hmm.
Is very effective. Just casting it out, kind of dragging it along. Crank baits, anything that you can cast out and move through that school seems to be triggering bites a little better than vertical jigging currently.
Okay.
And then, it won't be long here. We'll be having a troll around to get them to bite good, but we're kind of right in that middle of that transition currently.
Yep. And what I've always been amazed, and I wrote about this in the newspaper column, we were fishing with a little 1/32, I think it was, little bitty jig about 18 inches above the slab. And I commented that about half the fish that I caught were on that little tiny jig. So, a tip that we can relate to people, you mentioned a little Tony Aceta pet spoon. When you probably in a few weeks, a lot of fishermen will be trolling with a big old deep diving, like a hellbender, with the hooks removed and put about a 3-foot trailer and a little tiny silver Tony Aceta spoon. I've always amazed how in the world can those fish find. And, water is not crystal clear in Lakes Ray Hubbard, none of our lakes in North Texas, but they can nail those little baits, can't they?
Yeah, they sure can. They'll sniff it out in a hurry, and it's rare that you'll drag it through a school and not end up with a fish on the other end of it. Typically we're using one, it's chrome with a white feather. They also have it, gold with a chartreuse feather. But yeah, either one of them, they're a perfect bait for trolling, or like I say, even a casting rig. We like to use a little egg sinker to get it down faster, almost like a Carolina rig style setup. But it's a very effective bait for summertime out there.
Yeah, that's something I've never done. I want to kind of talk about that a little bit more. So just say a little Tony Aceta pet spoon. We just call it a pet spoon. There's spin-offs of the Tony Aceta. So we'll just say a little. You're talking about those little ones too, aren't you? Maybe they're not even an inch long or something that size. Is that what we're talking about?
Yeah, they're short. They're probably an inch and a half at the longest. Kind of thin, narrow, and then just typically they'll have a single feather and a single hook, not a treble.
Mm-hmm.
Just slightly cupped, so it just kind of twists and goes kind of wild behind whatever you're dragging it behind.
Now tell
Real
me how
erratic movement.
Oh yeah. Do you do it rig it up like a Carolina rig of sorts with a swivel and a little bell weight above it, or how do you rig it up?
Yeah, so currently what I'm running is about a 1 to 1.5 ounce bell weight, just depending on, or not bell weight, but an egg sinker.
Egg sinker. That's what I'm trying to say.
Through.
Yep.
Depending on the water depth that we're using, I was finding them over the weekend in 12 to 15 foot, so we weren't needing too much weight to get down there. But like I say, just a 1 ounce will get you there, a swivel, and then about an 18 to 24 inch leader with a single spoon on it was working real effectively. And I like to throw it out, and you can either drag it real slowly, just a constant slow reel, or you can move it a little bit faster and then give it some slack to get back to the bottom, and then move it 5-6 cranks, give it some slack, 5-6 cranks, give it some slack. little more erratic approach, and sometimes that'll trigger your bites. But
that's I've never done that, and that's got the old brain clicking right here. It's making me think of something else, and I'm going to ask you about this. Maybe it's something you haven't used, but it could be effective, might not be. Okay, so when we're drift fishing for big blue catfish, we use a Santee Cooper rig. And I bet you know where I'm going with this question. I wonder if you were to use, say, have your swivel and have your weight above it, where we're talking about an egg weight that slides up and down the line with a hole all the way through it, folks. But have that set up, and say about a 3-foot leader, and then have your little pet spoon, your little spoon on the end, and then come up about a foot. Say you have a 3-foot leader. Say you come up a foot and peg a tiny floater on there, like a Santee Cooper rig for catfish. I just wonder. That's something I've never done. It's worth a try, isn't it?
I've never thrown that. I could see that working. I bet you'd end up with teeth marks all over that bobber too. They're going to target that bright color. But
let's try that next time we fish together.
That's interesting. Yeah, that may be one of those deals to get out and toss around and see what happens.
People are going to be saying, "Wait a minute, that was old Luke Clayton and Casey."
That's the Luke Clayton rig.
And Casey, they came up with that on the radio one time. No, I'm laughing, but I think it would be the only kicker. You may even want to put a 4-foot leader on there, and have more distance from the pet spoon trailer to the little floater that you peg. Yeah, I don't know, that could be played with, but if they're hitting it, that pet spoon, when you're doing it like you're doing it, it's pretty dang near bottom for sure. Matter of fact, it might even be on bottom at times. But
if you think about running a hellbender, say you're in 15 foot of water running a hellbender, you're making bottom contact.
You are.
So that spoon may be dragging behind there at 12 inches off the bottom or whatever it is. So you're really really close down on it.
And that may our new method, our new theorem here may not even work. But it's I bet folks are listening and say, "Wait a minute, I might want to try that." We will next time we get together. I'll rig one up and have it ready.
I like the theory.
I like the theory too. I don't know if it's a good theory, but there's only one way to find out, and we both know what that is.
That's how new techniques are developed.
That's right, buddy. Somebody
tries something off the wall and it works.
Now, one thing, last time I fished with you, Casey, what I noticed, you had your skin protected. You had a long sleeve, I really don't know what those, it's a pullover shirt with a hood. And now I'll be honest with you, I'm not sure 25 years ago the material was even available. You wouldn't want to be doing that back years ago because the material was too thick, but your shirt was very thin. And I dare say you stayed cooler with that on than a person with just a normal T-shirt or something on. That's UV protection in that cloth, right?
Yeah, so it does have UV protection. And Luke, I started out early in right out of high school, I guess, in the landscape business, and then I fished for years and years.
Yep.
Did not do a great. My apologies. Did not do a great job of taking care of my skin.
Right.
And just didn't do a good job of taking care of myself, and have paid for it later on in life here. I've already had to have a cancer spot burned off my face, and I'm just now in my mid 40s, so it's become just real important to take care of my skin now. So sunblock, hands, face, but that hooded T-shirt or that hooded breathable shirt that I wear, I'm able to pull that hood up over my face, over my head, and keep that sun off my neck and top of my ears. And yes, it does keep you cooler than standing there in the scorching sun. So
I've got to do that. I spent many years as a surveyor out, road jobs and things like that, out all day, 10 hours a day in the summer. And back in the day, we didn't even use sunscreen. Get out there and get wet. But I paid the price too. I'm relatively light complected, so I had a couple of spots that luckily I don't have any problem anymore. But the bottom line is, friends, think about it. If you're 20, that's great. But if you're 60, that's okay too. But from now on, think about protecting your skin, because we're in for it's Texas and it's summer, Casey. So we're in for another 2 or 3 months of time that old sun's going to be bearing down. I wish we had more time, but we don't. chumsonthewater.com, chumsonthewater.com is the website, I think, and then folks can find you on Facebook, and you guys post current information on, well, some at Ray Hubbard, which is just east of Dallas, and then a lot at Lake Tawakoni, right?
Yeah, we've been doing more and more Hubbard trips and enjoy that lake. Both Brett and I grew up on that lake.
Oh, yeah.
But yeah, you're right. We've been spending most of our time on Tawakoni, but we'll take you either place and have a good day on the water.
Okay, and then how do they find you on Facebook? Just Chums on the Water?
Yeah, just Chums on the Water, Facebook or TikTok.
Okay.
We stay real active on our Facebook page. Post our trips. You can kind of see what we've been catching, and that's our best place to go.
Well, folks, these guys will show you a good time, and I tell you what, the 2 times I've been with you, it was some fine dining when I got back home on some fresh fish. Okay. Casey, thank you a lot for being with us, buddy.
Luke, thanks for having me on.
Folks, this segment is made possible by Smoking Tex electric smokers that I've been using a long, long time, Catfish Pro, catfishing baits, and catfish supplies, the Bow Barn in Greenville, Texas, right there on I-30, Ultramatic feeders, and AGM Global Vision, maker of the spotters and thermal scopes that I hunt with. Folks, how about that little intro from Ernest Tubb there? This segment here is brought to us by the Choctaw Hunting Lodge up in southeast Oklahoma, owned by the Choctaw Nation. Pyramid Air, your one-stop shop for everything airgun related. Doug's Jugs, maker of some awesome jug lines for catching catfish. That's online, DougsJugs.com. Well, friends, what do you say we talk about a topic that's a little different, way different than what I usually talk about? Let's talk about catching muskies up north with a good friend of mine, Mr. Jeff Rice. Hey, Jeff, thank you for being with us, and let's talk about muskie fishing. I bet a lot of our friends have caught muskie. I've never caught one, but you're heading out on an airplane here later today to go catch a muskie, right?
Oh, welcome. Yeah, thanks for having me on, Luke. And yeah, looking forward to it. Heading up to visit my brother and nephews, and they're big muskie fishermen. And of course, I've muskie fished a lot in my lifetime. But now that I'm in Texas, we don't find muskies down here, so not going to catch many down here. But it's a lot like, catching northern pike. The only thing a little bit different with the muskie is they're a little more elusive. They're a little harder to catch. I think they coined them the fish of 10,000 casts or something like that. Yep. And they are a little bit tough to catch, but when you do catch them, it's pretty rewarding and a whole lot of fun. And the action can be just right up close and personal. I've seen so many muskies caught where you're reeling in your big prop bait or whatever, and you do a figure 8 circle in front of the boat. And those doggone things come up out of nowhere and slam your bait, and it's right in front of you, and it's just excitement. But they can get quite large, and they're really neat predatory fish. So looking forward to getting up, not only just to see the family, but to get out on the water and see if we can't get lucky and catch one. My nephew caught one 2 days ago that was 42 inches. So they're on the bite up there. So hopefully we'll get on some.
Well, I hope you do. Yeah, I've watched videos. I've fished a lot in northern Canada where there are no muskies. Muskies, they're like Minnesota, southern Canada. But when the winters get too cold, muskie can't make it. But I fished a lot for northern pike up north, those flying lakes, and you've been with me on some of that. And,
yes,
I liken it to the pikes, except I don't know if the numbers of muskie are just not as numerous as the pike up in those remote lakes, but I do know they're a challenge to catch. And gosh, 40-something each. I hope y'all get one. Will you be using big? Do you know what kind of baits that will be working best?
A lot of prop baits, like a bucktail kind of a bait, where you've got your spinning blade and your bucktail, if you will, coming off the back. I know they use a lot of those type baits. There are some wooden, Suic is a brand or a type of bait we used to use it quite a bit. So I'll probably learn when I get up there as to what they're catching on. I do know that they catch a lot of them on prop baits, though, like that, the bucktails and whatnot, but they do have a particular area, and I don't know if it's the underwater, structure, geographic area where they're fishing, that they tend to catch quite a few of them. So I think they do kind of hang out in certain types of terrain or structure, and of course they, the muskies are, as you know, ferocious feeders, kind of like a northern pike, and they they look for their prey in this structured area. And so anyway, hopefully they'll be holding some for me and I can get some, and we'll show you on A Sportsman's Life what happens if I catch one.
That's right. That's right, Jeff. Folks, Jeff puts together our digital TV show each week called A Sportsman's Life. It's on YouTube. You can go to YouTube and just search out A Sportsman's Life, or Carbon TV. It's hosted there. That's where most people watch it. But I'm sure you'll have a muskie video, I bet you. Is it northern Minnesota that you'll be in?
Yeah. Yeah, it's Duluth. Duluth, Minnesota is the northern part of Minnesota. It's right there off of the tip of Lake Superior. And I think you go maybe another half hour north of Duluth and you're in Canada. So yeah, it's pretty far north up there.
You'll be fishing with your brother Rick and his sons, right?
His two boys, two nephews. Yeah, they are quite the anglers. They are out just about every day. They're out fishing, and I don't know. I can't remember last year. My nephew Rick, I think he caught, I don't know, maybe 15 or so, 18 muskies, and the biggest one was like right around 50 inches.
Ooh, boy.
And, I mean that's getting into some big fish. So these guys know what they're doing. So I'm excited to go spend some
jump
time
in there with them and keep that. What little I know about muskie, and I know a little bit more about pike fishing, northern pike, is keep that drag set right on that reel,
Absolutely. Yeah. And the thing about muskies is it's all catch and release. Never, no one ever takes muskies and doesn't. You take pictures, measure length and girth if you don't want to have a replica made or something like that. But yeah, exactly. Have your drag set right, get ready for some action, and like I said, hopefully, knock on wood, we'll have some great video for Our Sportsman's Life, and you'll all be able to see it down the road. Me catching a big muskelinge. That would be cool.
That's what I'm looking for. Are they pretty much acrobats too? Do they jump quite a bit? A muskie?
Oh, they can. Yeah. They can. They take off and come out of the water almost like a tarpon might. I've seen them do that. They're powerful fish. So having the right equipment is kind of essential for catching muskies. So, and I know they're all geared up with the best stuff you can have up there. So all I have to do is show up, and they got a rod ready for me, so I'm ready to go.
Yeah, the odds are stacked in your favor, Jeff. That's for sure. Well, the difference in a northern pike. Of course, you've caught lots of northern pike too. It seems like I don't know the difference really in a muskie. I'm sure if I know what the pike looks like, but it seems like maybe the muskie's got a bigger head. Is that right? Maybe not. I don't know.
I think it's all the size of fish, because I've seen some big northern pikes, Luke, that have heads that are just kind of mind-blowing. They're so big. But the real difference, the real noticeable difference is the northern pike tends to have spots where the muskellunge has like wavy lines that run through the body.
Oh, okay.
So if you put them side by side, you go, oh, okay, I see. Yeah. And you definitely will know the difference when you see the markings.
They're all of the family of the pike type family, because here in Texas there's a chain pickerel. It's a small. I've caught them up to maybe 2 pounds. It's probably the biggest one I've ever caught. Lake Caddo has a lot of chain pickerel, and they look exactly like a northern pike, like a baby one.
Yep.
They're all pike. I mean, when they hit a spinnerbait or whatever, they nail it like they mean business. So, yeah, it's interesting though, the pike type fish, how they're distributed. Like the muskie, for some genetic reason, he can't live in real cold water like the northern pike.
Yeah, I know, because you and I've been up to northern Canada many times, and that's the first question we ask. Hey, is there any northern pike? I mean, any muskies in here? They're like, nope, all northern pike.
No, there are none. There are none up there. That is interesting. Yeah. And then the fact that northern pike, like a muskie's got to have. It probably has a lot to do with water temperature. I know that it does. That's the key factor.
Sure
but you wonder why a smaller one, which is a little chain pickerel, is just, like I say, just looks like a northern pike. They flourish down in some waters down here, like Lake Caddo. That drainage is just, I fish for them. You fish for them is crazy, but in the wintertime, a big old flashy spinnerbait is but you'll catch one that'll weigh a pound, that'll hit a spinnerbait you'd think that you'd be targeting a muskie with. But I fished for them quite a few times down at Caddo, and always in January and February. Used to fish with Billy Carter down there. Billy passed away a couple of years ago, but he and his wife Dottie owned Johnson's Ranch. His son still manages. That's a famous. We're getting a little off topic, but that Johnson's Ranch Marina is the oldest inland marina in the state. And it's been around since the early 1900s. You and I have to go down there sometime, Jeff.
We'll have to do that.
It's like stepping back in time, But interesting, there are fish that look a whole lot like a muskie right here in Texas, but they're just like baby. They'd be like a baby muskie,
We call them hammer handles.
Hammer handles. That's exactly what they are.
Yeah, a little. Or when up in Canada, we've caught the little pencil pike, we call them, or whatever.
Yeah.
Anyway,
the thing about a pike though, or those type fish, they might only be a foot long or a pound, but they hit like they're a tarpon. They are
quite amazing for their size. Yep,
that's true.
How powerful they are.
The word game fish is certainly appropriate for them. Well, Jeff, have a good flight up there. I know you're going to be heading out later today, and I look forward to the video, and make sure and tell Rick and the boys that old Luke said hello, and send pictures.
Will do. Oh yeah, if we get one, we'll get a picture to you right away. So, looking forward to it. Thank you much. I appreciate it, and I will say hello to Rick and the boys, and we will check in with you upon my return.
Folks, this is Luke. For about the past decade, I've been hunting editor for Air Gun Hobbyist magazine. I think the only magazine devoted strictly to air gun shooting and hunting in the country. Well, in that length of time, I've learned quite a bit about big bore air guns and smaller calibers too. A spot to go to that if you're interested in air guns, you need to know about Pyramid Air. The website is PYRAMYD, pyramidair.com. They have anything and everything you need, from the guns themselves, the big bores or the smaller calibers, to the accessories. Just remember pyramidair.com, and there's a number when you get on the website if you need to call and talk to somebody. Give them a buzz, and they can fill you in on little details that you might need to know about shooting or hunting with big bore air guns. While you're on the website there, I'd like you to check out the big bore air gun that I've done a great deal of hunting with. It's the Seneca Dragon Claw, 50 caliber, pressures up to 3,000 psi, and it looks like a conventional rifle. Wooden stock. I think you'll like the appearance, and I know you'll like the performance. It shoots not only bullets, but also air bolts as well, tipped with a broadhead. Check it out. It's the Seneca Dragon Claw.
The snowflakes fall as winter comes, and time just seems to fly.
Friends, this segment is brought to us by CVA muzzleloaders. In my opinion, the very best muzzleloaders in the world, the ones that I shoot. You can check them out online, cva.com. AGM Global Vision, maker of the Rattler and the Adder that I use. You can check them out online too, agmglobalvision.com. Kubi's Wild Game Processing and Kubi's Restaurant in Dallas. And Vineyard Max, maker of some awesome deer attractant and some very fine game feeders and fish feeders located down in Nacogdoches, Texas. Check them out at vineyardmax.net. Well, friends, it is your old buddy Luke, and we have a little time in today's show to visit. That's what I want to do one-on-one with you and kind of tell you what's going on and some of the fun stuff I've been doing and some of the fun stuff coming up. You know, it's summertime now. I probably don't need to tell you that, but it's getting hot. But just not too far down the road, it's going to be fall again. Those bucks, as Mr. Wysoon was talking about, those antlers are going to get in hard horn, and it's going to be time to go hunting again. But until then, we've got to make it through the summer. I went on a fun fishing trip, farm pond fishing trip, this past week. Well, actually about 3 days ago. A neighbor close to where I live has a couple of 100 acres, I guess, and he's got a long gravel pit that's deep in the middle. It's probably excavated back in the 60s, but it's probably 15 foot deep on one end, and it's full of native bass. And they were on a strong bite here about 3 days ago. My buddy Ken the Shepherd and I went down and fished. He's got a little boat that's rigged. It's a 10-foot aluminum flat nose, and it's rigged out for what we call pond hopping. And I've actually named his little boat the Pond Hopper. It fits perfectly in the back of a long bed pickup truck, or a short bed, really, if you want to tie it down good. And he's got this thing set up with comfortable bass seats, very comfortable. It's like fishing out of a big bass boat, but it's only 10 foot long. Ideal for farm ponds. It's got a graph, so you can check out, see how deep find out where the contours on the bottom are and everything. Trolling motor, I mean, it's ready to go. It's a fun little boat to fish out of. Well, we waited until sunup. We got an early start, fished a couple of hours, caught a bunch of bass. And what do you think what's your go-to bait for catching bass, largemouth bass, in a farm pond or a small city pond for that matter? What do you think's the most productive day in and day out? I bet a lot of you are going to say a little white spinner bait. Well, we had a little white spinner bait. We didn't have the old famous H&H, but we had some little spinner baits in different colors. I don't think the color was real important on this trip. But I'll tell you a bait that we caught a ton of bass on. By a ton, I'm talking about, I bet we caught 20, is a little beetle spin. You know, a beetle spin was a popular bait back 25, 30 years ago, and they're still available. People still use them, but they're not as popular as they used to be. I used the yellow beetle spin. If you think a beetle spin is just really a soft plastic spinner with a spinner bait, little spinner on it is all it is. But I remember back in the day, we used to get I was looking for some yellow, soft plastic part, yellow with black spots. I used to use that a lot. Couldn't find that, but just the yellow. I don't know if it's the size of that bait that triggers these farm pond bass. We were using bigger spinner baits too, and I'll be honest with you, we caught 2 to 1 at least on that beetle spin. That just became our go-to bait. We caught a few on plastic worms, Texas rigs, But lots of fun, and if you think you need a $60,000 boat to go fishing, you don't. Bank fishing off of a farm pond can be challenging because of shoreline vegetation. That grass beds, if you will, hydrilla or coontail moss, whatever's growing, lily pads, can choke access off from the bank for casting. You can cast out there, but you just can't get your bait or your fish in through all that vegetation at some ponds at times. So that's where a little boat like this comes in really handy. I'd admonish you to, get you a life vest regardless where you're fishing. But these little boats there, if you pay attention, keep your center, your body in the center of the boat, and don't be jumping around. They're very stable. We use a flat nose I think they're a bit more stable maybe than the V nose, but on a small boat, there, if you think safety is what I'm getting at, especially if you're out fishing by yourself, which I do sometime. I've got a 10-foot boat just like Kenneth's, and I don't have it rigged quite as nice as his is, but I've caught a lot of bass out of it. We are about to embark on a new project. I'm going to tell you about this. My friend Kenneth Shepard, he lives about a mile from me, and he's got some real good hunting land. He lets me hunt with him for hogs over there, and he's taken some nice deer. But we are rigging up a portable hunting blind. Now, snap-lock hunting blinds, you've heard me talk about them, and you've seen them. Jeff Rice and I use them down in on his Buck and Bass Ranch. We probably got 3 or 4 snap-lock hunting blinds down there. They come, now they will ship them. Used to, they had to ship in a truck. They came on a pallet. But now, snap-lock has got the Freedom blind. It's plastic, but it's very sturdy. It's got windows in it and the roof. It's dry. The Freedom blind ships right to your door, so you don't have to, it doesn't take a bobtail truck to deliver it to you. We've got one of these coming, and here's what we're going to do. Kenneth is a welder and prefabber. I mean, he can build anything. He's going to put an axle and rig up a little trailer. Now, we're going to use the 4x4 snap-lock, the Freedom blind. It's also, you can get a kit shipped right to you that's a 4x6. We've got one of those down at Jeff Rice's place. Not hard to set up at all. Instructions are really good. But the little 4x4, Kenneth's going to prefab a floor out of plywood on a trailer, little trailer. It's not going to be it's not going to be something that you pull down the road. But think about this. If you want to set up near a corn feeder for hogs, pull that blind up. We're going to move it around with a golf cart. I mean, you can build any size trailer you want. You could build a trailer for a 4x6 snap-lock, the Freedom blind, if you want to. But this little 4x4, we want to hunt. One of my goals is to take my Seneca Dragon Claw 50 caliber air rifle and pull that blind in once we get it set up at night. Hunt at night with my. I've got an AGM Rattler thermal scope mounted on that Dragon Claw. I want to pull that blind in about 50 yards from the corn feeder and hunt hogs with it, at night. Just more comfortable hunting out of a blind, at least I think so. And then come deer season, we'll pull that blind back out under a tree out there where you got a visibility of probably 150 yards and then hunt deer out of it. So that's just a thought, something you might want to think about on your lease. The Freedom blind, these are plastic blinds. They're very heavy. I've got one that I've been using probably 8 years. It's still down at Jeff Rice's Buck and Bass Ranch. As good as the day I bought it. They don't rust. They last forever. I guess the only thing that'd mess them up would be a tornado or a tree limb falling on one of them, But that's what I've been up to lately. Little pond fishing, and we've got this Freedom blind ordered. It'll be in, and Kenneth's starting work on his trailer probably next week, on his little the trailer that we're going to use to move it around. Something you might want to think about on your hunting lease. These blinds weigh, they're very lightweight, but they're strong, and fix you up a little. You might have some type of little trailer that would work, but put it on there, mount it permanently, and then you are a mobile hunter. Folks, I have enjoyed visiting with all of you. It's been a fun show. Gosh, we had Casey Laughlin on with us talking about a new or a current pattern for catching white bass. Larry Weissoon, it's talking about catching trout later. It was just a fun show. Do remember now, our TV show is called A Sportsman's Life, and you can go right now on YouTube and seek out A Sportsman's Life and watch Kenneth and I catching all these farm pond bass. It's a fun segment. You've got bass jumping and nothing big, maybe a 3.5 pounder for the biggest, but it was a fun little show. Now, A Sportsman's Life is also on Carbon TV. You can go there, carbontv.com. And Larry Weissoon, Jeff Rice, and I do this show every week. And, of course, we have guests like Kenneth and other, catfish guides and striper guides and hunting outfitters with us, but it's a lot of fun. And do remember catfishradio.org. You can go there and listen to this show after it airs on all our stations and after it becomes a podcast. Folks, that about wraps our show up for this week. I've enjoyed being with you, and I hope you've had a good time, too. This segment was made possible by AGM Global Vision, maker of the Rattler and the Adder, two awesome thermal scopes that I use for all my night hunting. Check out AGM, all the products that they have there online, agmglobalvision.com. And, folks, we're also brought to you by the Choctaw Hunting Lodge up in southeast Oklahoma, located about, 45 minutes west of Hugo, Oklahoma, owned by the Choctaw Nation. It's about 45,000 acres of awesome mountain, country, hills, valleys, loaded with game. Lots of eastern turkey, and they do eastern turkey hunts if you're looking for a spot to hunt turkey in the spring. Also, I want to remind you about the Seneca 50 caliber Dragon Claw that shoots bullets and pellets. And by pellets, I'm talking about 200 and 210 grain lead, chunks of lead. It's a big bore air gun that I use. Check out the Seneca Dragon Claw there at pyramidair.com.